Sorry, what do you want me to do?
That's okay, Mataji.
Okay.
Yes, Mataji, we can start.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna, everybody. So today, are you able to see my screen I have shared? We are.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Yeah, we are going to be doing self-realization. What does the Bhagavad Gita have to say about self-realization? So this is the topic we're going to be discussing with a specific reference to the verses from Bhagavad Gita. And so let's just start with the invocation prayers first. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Giriraja Swaminiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashate Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindaki Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. So we'll be discussing a few verses from Bhagavad Gita regarding self-realization and whatever spiritual benefits we all, um, um, I mean, we derive from this class. I would like to dedicate it to my dear friend Preeti Vilasni. So without further ado, we will just start with the class. So this, I would like it to be as interactive as possible, that way we all can contemplate on this topic. So just as an icebreaker, what do you think self-realization is from your understanding? I mean, what do you think is self-realization? Anybody wants to volunteer?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hi,
this is Gorangi. Yeah, my conception of self-realization is to actually experience my original relationship with Krishna, or at least, I mean, that would be the ultimate conception. But in the meantime, to at least realize that not only am I not this body at all, and to experience that, actually, not just intellectually, but to actually experience that I'm spiritual energy that's different from this body, and to understand that I am meant only for Krishna's selfless, loving service. If I even don't realize what my original identity is, specifically, to at least understand that I am spirit, so meant for Krishna's loving service exclusively.
Wow, That's a
my
very
idea.
nice answer, Mataji. Thank you so much. Yeah, we will
Mhm.
see, like, you are right on there, but we'll see more details in the class. Shreya, you have raised your hands. Do you want to say something?
Yes, Mataji, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. I think like it's kind of the same thing as what Mataji said, but I think self-realization means to discover your relationship with Krishna and realize that you are not this body and Paramatma resides within you, and you are the
Wonderful.
part and parcel of Krishna.
Wonderful. Yeah, very nice, Shreya. That's really a great realization for your age. I'm thinking you're young the way you sound. So that's wonderful. Yeah, Varun Kasturi, do you want to go ahead?
I think self-realization means realizing that you're really the soul and not the body, and you're like Shreya said, your eternal relationship with Krishna.
Sure. Yeah, so everybody is almost echoing the same thoughts and ideas. And I guess it's because of your constant association with devotees that we all got that right. So let's just move on to the next slide. So we'll see, I mean, why does a person have the need to self-realize, or why should one go after this quest of self-realization? And who is the eligible candidate and how does he do it? So these are some of the questions Srila Prabhupada he addresses in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. So any volunteers who want to read this slide? Okay, if there are no volunteers, I will read myself.
I
Introduction.
can read.
Okay, go ahead.
Introduction to Bhagavad Gita and 1.46. Out of so many human beings who are suffering, there are few who are actually inquiring about their position, as to what they are, why they are put into this awkward position, and so on. Unless one is awakened to this position of questioning his suffering, unless he realizes that he does not want suffering but rather wants to make a solution to all the suffering, then one is not to be considered as a perfect human being. Humanity begins when this sort of inquiry is awakened in one's mind. In the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry is called Brahma Jignasa Athato Brahma Jignasa. Every activity of the human being is to be considered a failure unless he inquires about the nature of the absolute. Therefore, those who begin
To question.
sorry Mataji, once your screen,
Oh,
yeah, it came back. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering or where they came from and where they shall go after.
okay, I think she got cut off. Did she? Okay, let me continue from there. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering or where they came from and where they shall go after death are proper students for understanding Bhagavad Gita. The sincere student should also have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a student was Arjuna. Men must be intelligent to realize the importance of human life and refuse to act like ordinary animals. A human being should realize the aim of his life, and this direction is given in all Vedic literatures, and the essence is given in Bhagavad Gita. But we are not these bodies, and realizing this is the first stage in spiritual realization. While observing the situation of his, this is actually verse 146 from the purport or the translation, from the purport. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self knowledge. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is telling us in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, that a person who does not inquire into this question, this important question, Athato Brahma Jignasa, as to who I am, what am I doing in this world. So a person who is not making this inquiry, he's actually leading an animalistic life. So he's not even come to the human platform. Sometimes we wonder, right, why some people do not get this question in the mind, or even if they get this question in the mind, they find some other ways and means to answer themselves about this thing. And many times what happens is, in India also, when as we were growing up, sometimes when such questions came up, we were told not to think too much on this, and they said, they just go about your job, I mean, go about your work, and you should be good, you don't want to think too much on these lines. So sometimes we try to push everything under the carpet, and try to be in denial, and pretend as though these questions don't exist. But the fact of life is that unless we answer these questions, our life will not have the proper purpose. Like Srila Prabhupada says, that the human life begins when this question, Atato Brahma Jignasa, when Brahma Jignasa, when there is this inquiry into the absolute truth, when that happens, only then does the human life begin. And he also is, he gives the qualifications of the student who is, in who is qualified to receive this knowledge or the self-realization, is the student, sincere student, should have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says, a kind and soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. So these are the qualifications he's listing in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. And he also is pointing out that the first stage in spiritual realization or self-realization is that to understand that we are not these bodies, but we are the spirit soul. So he is saying that this is the first stage. Generally, the conception for non-devotees would be to get to this stage of realizing that we are the spirit soul, and God is in control of everything, and we are not these bodies, and it kind of stops there. But for devotees who are practicing, they kind of know the whole truth about what self-realization is. And I mean, realizing that this we are the spirit soul and not the body is just one aspect of the self-realization. So let's move on. And so what does Prabhupada say about self-realization? It's a very beautiful point Srila Prabhupada makes about self-realization here. He totally turns the plate over. So any volunteers to read this?
Mataji, I can read it.
Okay, go ahead.
With the translation or the verse?
If you can, you do the verse, or the translation purport will do.
Okay, I should say the purport then?
Translation and purport.
Okay. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune. O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. The words
Nimittani
Nimitani Vipritani are significant. When a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? Everyone is interested in himself and his welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. Only real self-interest lies in Vishnu and Krishna. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains.
Yeah, this is a beautiful point Srila Prabhupada makes here in the purport. He says that Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. One's real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna. So Prabhupada is making this point in the purport that, self-realization, when we think about self-realization, we think it from our point of view as to, we don't consider ourselves the body, but just the spirit, soul, and how are we rendering service to Krishna like that. But then here Prabhupada gives an interesting twist to it. He says that one's real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna. So when we are, dedicating all our activities and, the everything, when we think, in Krishna's terms, then that is our self-interest. So this is actually a transliteration of a Bhagavatam verse from the seventh canto, from the Prahlad Charitra. So the verse is Nate vidu swartha gathim he Vishnu durashaya he bahirartamanya. So in that verse, what's happening is, Hiranyakashipu, he sends Prahlad away to learn, these topics of spirituality from Shanda and Amarka. They are the sons of Shukracharya. So he sends him, to learn these different different spiritual truths from them. But then when he goes and visits a Prahlad, he's like have he's with so much of paternal affection. He actually carries Prahlad on his lap and then asks him, so what have you learned? So then Prahlad starts saying this verse, and then Hiranyakashipu, actually he gets very angry that, like how come I sent you to learn, the actual spiritual science, and you're speaking this nonsense? And, like that, the story goes on. So Prahlad Maharaj, actually, he at this very young age of 5, he gives this knowledge away, that the Nate Vidu Swartha Gatim Hi Vishnu. Swa Artha Gatim Hi Vishnu. Swa Artha means that is of actual interest to oneself. Swa is self, artha is of interest, or which is of importance. Gatim hi Vishnu, that is Vishnu or Krishna, and it's none other than that. This is the basic understanding, a spiritual understanding, is that when we try to analyze things, or when we try to put things from our perspective, we are still in the material mode of life. And when we are trying to see things from Krishna's perspective, like everything in relation to Krishna, at that time we are actually involved or getting engaged in the process of self-realization. But until such time that we are looking at, even though, I may be performing devotional service, but still I'm thinking, like, I hope that, I get something out of it. I hope I can do this seva for something. That when I have my interest in place, that is still, I may not be making that real kind of progress into self-realization. The real one's real self-interest, like Prabhupada says, it lies in Vishnu. It's about how we serve the Lord and what pleases Krishna or Vishnu. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is trying to bring out. And I think this fits the definition of self-realization so beautifully, um, that when we, transfer all our thoughts to uh, Krishna, then that is actually the realization of our true self. So why am I not self-realized? What's stopping me? The solution. Okay. So why do we see that some people are taking into self-realization, and some who even take to the path, some do not take to the path, and some who take to the path also, they sometimes fall away from the path, or, it's a slow progress or things like that. So we get the answer here in this verse. Um, any volunteers? Okay, Shreya, you raised your hand. Very enthusiastic, Shreya.
Sorry about what happened before, Mataji. My internet dropped off.
Okay. Are you able to read or no?
Yeah. तस्मात् त्वामिन्द्रियाणि आदौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानं प्रजह्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्. Translation. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Purport. The Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self realization and specific knowledge of the self. Jnana refers to the knowledge of the self as distinguished from non self. In other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnana refers to the specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position and his relationship to the Supreme Soul. It is explained thus in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 9 chapter 31st verse.
You can skip
Jnana.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, we will stop here and then move on to the other slide. Um, so here we see very clearly Krishna is defining what actually stops one from getting self-realized or gaining the spiritual knowledge. And very clearly he says that it is the great symbol of sin or lust, that stops people from getting this knowledge. And what was I going? Yeah. So he says that the Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self realization and specific knowledge of the self. So, what does it mean by that? I mean, what it means exactly is that, when we try to think of selfish things like things for ourselves, when we have, okay, there is a difference between lust and prema, like we may already be aware. So lust is when we have desires independent of the enjoyment of Krishna, and prema is, or true love is, when we have desires which are actually connected to Krishna, which are uh, aimed at pleasing Lord Krishna. So everything else other than whatever is aimed at pleasing Lord Krishna is actually termed as lust. It includes like gross lust, in terms of sexual attraction. It could also include greed, for more wealth, money, fame, things like that. So everything is in one sense termed as lust. And here Prabhupada is explaining to us in the purport that the Lord is advising Arjuna to actually regulate the senses so we can get rid of this sinful enemy called lust. So it's so logical, we can understand from here that whenever we have any kind of a desire which is independent of pleasing the Lord Krishna, we understand that we are actually not getting that much involved in self-realization. I mean, the more we think about ourselves, the more we think about anything away from the pleasure of Lord Krishna, we are actually destroying this process of self-realization by ourselves. So so from the definition which we saw in the previous slide, where Prabhupada explained that self-realization is nothing but the interest of the self-interest is nothing but pleasing Lord Krishna or Vishnu, nate vidu swartha gatem hi Vishnu. So we see that when we are not doing that and when we are thinking independently, it is actually termed as lust, and that is what stops, or that is what hinders our urge for self-realization. And this is the reason why we see many people may not take to self-realization, even though they may have heard that this is a path, this is this is what devotees do, and this is what Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita. But then their own false ego or their self-interest, it stops them from actually going ahead on this path. And even as practicing devotees, sometimes we may have some kind of material attachments, which is again comes under the broad framework of lust. And that's what kind of hinders our progress, and makes it slow for us. So these these kind of desires which are independent of Lord Krishna, pleasure of Lord Krishna, is what actually destroys this urge for self-realization. And that is one main reason why people don't take to it. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Any volunteers, or I could read too?
Hare Krishna Mataji, like in the previous slide,
Mhm.
one question is like, how can we treat the love between mother and child? Is it called lust or is it called love, or how can we understand that, Mataji?
Yeah, I mean, see, mother and child on a very mundane level is again a material love. But then Srila Prabhupada also says that the Vatsalya Rasa, or the relationship between a mother and child, which you see in the material world, is, gives some semblance of the actual prema in the spiritual world, because the mother has like unconditional love for the child, but still it is on material terms. It is based on, because that is his or her, and that is her child, that's why she has that love and affection, though it is unconditional. And that is one aspect of prema. It's totally unconditional. The pure devotee does not expect anything from Lord Krishna, except that he always serve him in one way or the other, and always be in constant remembrance of the Lord. So yes, like Srila Prabhupada says, Vatsalya Rasa, the child and the mother relationship on the material platform, does give a glimpse of what actual prema on the spiritual world would be, but still it is based on the bodily relationship of a mother and a child. That's my understanding.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah. Okay, 3.41. Anybody wants to read?
Uh, Hare
Okay,
Krishna Mataji.
okay, please, Prabhu, go ahead.
3.41 purport. The knowledge of the self and supreme self is very confidential and mysterious, but such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained in their various aspects by the Lord himself. Bhagavad Gita gives us that general and specific knowledge of the self. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So, from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna consciousness and act accordingly. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot be deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So, from any stage of life or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of Godhead, the highest perfectional stage of human life. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you. So we see that in Bhagavad Gita, there is a mention of confidential knowledge, more confidential knowledge, most confidential knowledge, things like that. So why these, like Prabhupada says here in the purport, the knowledge of the self and supreme self is very confidential and mysterious. But such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained with their various aspects by the Lord Himself. So, when it comes straight from the Lord, like as in the Bhagavad Gita, then we can understand this knowledge of self-realization. That's what Srila Prabhupada is trying to point out here. And like we already discussed earlier, we see that lust is only the perverted reflection of prema, which actually exists in the uh, spiritual world. And Prabhupada says in the last line, from any stage of life or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness. So the best thing would be to start early, like how Prahlad Maharaj, Kaumaram Acharit Prajna, started at the very young age of 5. like that. Whenever you're able to grasp or understand at least something, you should start spiritual life very early. But then if you're not able to do that, like even I did not have that kind of knowledge before I came into contact with Srila Prabhupada's books and devotees. So even when you start late, we have to understand its urgency. um, Actually, I was discussing with some senior devotees a few years back in our Houston temple. And I was saying that there is some, this is one Prabhuji, he has actually served the deities, for the past 35 years. And so I was asking him, Prabhuji, there is some difference, between your generation, like how, you all are so into bhakti, and our generation, we as a congregation, we live outside of the temple community, and there is some difference. And I don't know if it is because of less devotion or what the thing is. And then the Prabhuji said that it's not less devotion or anything, but the sense of urgency which we had, that is not that obvious now. I mean, that is not, I mean, that's kind of lacking in the present generation. That's what he said. In Prabhupada days, and also about 20 or 30 years back, there was this sense of urgency when a person came to this knowledge of, Srila Prabhupada's books and what Krishna consciousness is all about. There was this urgency that I want to do this, I want to give up everything, and I want to just take to this. Like people just left everything and took up to Krishna consciousness. But then now, for some reason, we see that we don't find that great sense of urgency. Srila Prabhupada, actually, he was so, able to engage all the devotees who came under his wing in the service of Krishna 24/7. All the devotees were living in the temple. They were serving, they had a very nice routine to do from the morning to night. Like everybody attended Mangalarti and chanted their rounds, and then attended Guru Puja, Srimad Bhagavatam class, and then they had prasadam at the temple, and then went about book distribution, and afternoon they took some break and did some of their personal activities, things. And then they had Bhagavad Gita classes in the evenings too. So we see that all these things were happening, like clockwork during Srila Prabhupada's times. But now we see that there is, that urgency, that sense of urgency. I'm not saying it applies for everybody, but in some sense, it kind of has dwindled a little bit, at least I would like to think. So Prabhupada is saying that we should have this sense of urgency, and then, that's how we can give ourselves truly to this process of Krishna consciousness or self-realization. And that is the highest perfectional stage of human life. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so how do we get this knowledge? I mean, do we do it ourselves? How do we get this knowledge of self-realization? How do we make ourselves self-realized? I mean, just by understanding that I'm not the body, but I'm just the spirit soul, and I start reading the books by myself, would I, be doing the right thing, or what is needed? So here in this verse, Srila Prabhupada explains how we can actually get this knowledge in the right way. So this is a very important verse. I'm sure everybody is very familiar with it. Any volunteers who want to read? Shreya? Oh, wow, you're very enthusiastic. Go ahead.
तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः. Translation. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord Himself. No one can be can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master. and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciples. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as it is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam 6.3.19 says, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one to the right path, nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Shreya. Yeah, we see that how Srila Prabhupada is saying that the way to approach self-realization, how can we get this knowledge of self-realization is only by a self-realized soul. So a self-realized soul is a person who can give us this actual knowledge of self-realization. And he says, what other than the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita to actually, get this knowledge of self-realization from, because this is directly spoken from by the Lord, and and we are reading these Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is given to us, in its in its purest form. So this is the way how we can actually get this knowledge is by reading, when I mean, in the purport, it is written that, where is that? No, nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. So we can always ask this question as to Prabhupada wrote so many books, and always we are encouraged to read Srila Prabhupada's books. And how come then would that not, be equal to just independent study of book of knowledge? And would that not give us this exact science of self-realization? We have to understand that Srila Prabhupada has given not only the translations, but the purports to each of these scriptures, each of these verses, which actually convey the essence of the verse. If we were to just read the translation and the word for word meaning, we could arrive at different truths or different realizations. But Srila Prabhupada has actually given us the purport. So when we read Srila Prabhupada's books with his purports, we are actually gaining, or we are actually experiencing this process of self-realization, because we are actually hearing it from the direct words of Srila Prabhupada himself. So, like they say, until a person has found his or her spiritual master, they actually consider Srila Prabhupada as a spiritual master, because they take to reading the books of Srila Prabhupada and gain this. Knowledge of the science of Krishna consciousness from Srila Prabhupada's books. So when we get this question in our mind, that how do we make sure that we are not doing some independent study and we are actually following these processes, we should understand that because Prabhupada has given everything away in his books with very clear purports, very clear translations. Many times we see that the Sanskrit words and the translation to the Sanskrit words is very different from what is generally given by Sanskrit scholars. And we wonder why Srila Prabhupada has given different definition of the same word. Sometimes we see for the same word Prabhupada would have defined in different ways, in different chapters, in different verses. And we wonder why Prabhupada is doing it, when normally there is some other meaning which is attributed in Sanskrit to it. But because this is coming directly from Srila Prabhupada, the Acharya, we just take it as it is. So it is as good as getting this knowledge directly from Srila Prabhupada. So these books of Srila Prabhupada are the actual treasure which can, give us the science of self-realization. Of course, the whole system which has been formulated by Srila Prabhupada, including the Mangalarti, the morning japa session, the Guru Puja, the Bhagavatam class, everything is actually working towards devotee association and getting siksha in one way or the other. Either it is getting philosophical knowledge, or the other way is getting practical knowledge, or when you do DT seva, or when you're doing DT cooking, or even serving other devotees, we are getting the practical aspect of devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada has actually devised this means of getting both the theory and the practical so beautifully by the programs which actually are followed in our ISKCON temples. 4.34 purport. Yeah, let me read it. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve this spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. So, like we see in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying that not only should there be a quest for spiritual knowledge or understanding from the Guru, but it should also be combined with service. There should be submission and service. We should actually submit. When what Srila Prabhupada means by submission is that we take to the words of the spiritual master seriously and not second guess what the spiritual master is trying to give us. Sometimes the faith may not have fully developed in the spiritual master. So how do we know, how can we go about this? Like especially in the beginning stages when we are trying to seek our guru, and we don't know like what kind of a relationship we have with our guru, or how does what are how can we serve the guru. So the best way they say is that you should try and serve. If you feel that you're inclined, or you're you like the teachings of some spiritual master, you should serve them for a year or two, and then try to understand the mood of the spiritual master, and then check if you're really ready to serve the spiritual master, and if you're really ready for the process seriously, and then that's when you actually start thinking about initiation and things like that. So this service is very important to the spiritual master, to actually understand the mood of the spiritual master. And the spiritual master also gives a lot of tests. Personally speaking, I had got so many tests from my spiritual master, so many. In fact, when I first took shelter of my guru, uh, some Matajis had told me in our temple that, oh, you've taken shelter of your guru, and he tests his disciples quite a bit. It's not easy. So I was not aware that that this is a tough test like that, but I was told like that afterwards. I was like, what could the test be? But later on, with my experiences, uh, I understood what Mataji meant by, when the spiritual master actually tests you in so many ways. So I did undergo my fair share of tests also before I got initiated by my Guru Maharaj. But then it is it is for our own benefit that the Guru Maharaj they um, actually do this testing on the disciple, for just to make sure that a person is really really serious about this path. Because uh, just a couple of days back I was reading this, in fact I shared it on Bhakti Sangha group too, this quote by Srila Prabhupada, where he says that a guru is not like an ornament for a grahastha, for a householder. It's not like some kind of some treasured possession or something. You say, I have a guru, and it's not a prestige, or it's not a social status that you have a guru. a person must seek a guru only when they are fully convinced that they want this knowledge of self-realization, that they want to know about the science of self-realization. And until such time, they're not serious candidates. So it's not like, even Hanumat Preshak Swami Maharaj used to always mention this in the class. He used to say that, no, don't invite me to your homes. I'm not the decoration for your home, not like that. So we have to take this matter very seriously. And when we are serious enough that, we can actually follow, submit to the guru and follow his instructions, only then we should actually even think about initiation and things like that. Okay, next one. 6.8 purport. Any volunteers? Hi, Bol.
Hare Krishna Mataji. 6.8. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.234. This Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna consciousness but simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied with the pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily diluted and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with the mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah, so we see here that Srila Prabhupada is explaining that just by knowledge, a person cannot become self-realized. It can only be done when a perfect transcendental knowledge is received from another self-realized person, and that is because uh, he is satisfied with pure devotional service. So only a self-realized person who has totally given himself up to the service of Krishna and taken to the science of Krishna consciousness seriously, only such a person can give us this kind of true knowledge of self-realization. But until such point, we need to actually take shelter of the acharya's books or things like that. But only a person who knows it can give it. It's not, it's like a blind can like they say, a blind person would take the lead of a blind, like that. So like the blind man leading the society. So what happens when the blind man leads the society? He himself is blind, and what can he or she help the other person with, right? So similarly, a person who is not self-realized, how can he give this knowledge of self-realization to the others? So it is important that we take shelter of somebody who is self realized, because he or she can impart us this knowledge. He says that he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no value, greater value than pebbles or stones. So these are actually like lostra, like like he says in one of the Bhagavatam verses. I kind of I'm not, it's not coming to my mind, where he says that these are nothing but useless piece of trinkets, unless uh, it is directly connected to Krishna. All the other knowledge is nothing but a waste of time, so to speak. Okay. The next topic is, so is this science of self-realization above the Vedas? So what is the height of it? Okay, this is the verse we are going to read to understand this concept of what Srila Prabhupada talks about self-realization. Any volunteers?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah, please go ahead, Mataji.
त्रैगुण्या विषया वेदा निस्त्रैगुण्या भवार्जुना निद्वन्द्वो नित्यसत्त्वस्थो निर्योगाक्षेमात्मवान्. Translation: The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of the material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes, be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Purport: All material activities involve actions and reactions in the three modes of material nature. They are meant for fruitive results which cause bondage in the material world. The Vedas deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. Arjuna, as a student and friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jignasa, are questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. So, like we see here, Srila Prabhupada is saying that one needs to rise, Traigunya Vishayaveda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna. So, one needs to rise above this Vedas, and understand, go to the next step, which is Vedanta, Vedanta is nothing but, it's a collection of epithets or pithy statements, which actually are, spiritual truths, so to speak. And commentaries to this Vedanta are given by our acharyas in the different sampradayas, and us in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, we regard the commentary to the Vedanta as proclaimed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary to this Vedanta. And so we follow that. We study the Srimad Bhagavatam to actually understand what how to answer these questions from the Vedanta. These, so Athato Brahma Jignasa, we already saw that in the introduction. Srila Prabhupada says that one must come to this platform of asking this question of Athato Brahma. That is the first epithet in the Vedanta Sutra. And he says that we have to rise above the Vedas before we before we actually come to this platform of self-realization or Krishna consciousness. And why does he say that? Because Vedas are generally, they are oriented towards materialistic people who have who have materialistic desires and who are engaged in fruitive actions and things like that. It's for the general public who wants to just mostly they are involved with dharma, artha, kama. Moksha, they just uh, they leave it for the end of their life, maybe after 60 or after retirement. That's when they think about the fourth aspect that the Vedas deal with. So mostly, most of the time in their life is just gone uh, doing dharma, artha, kama. So dharma is, in their viewpoint, in the general viewpoint, dharma is trying to get an occupation, some job. Artha is making money, and kama is enjoying with that money which they make. Like once a person is educated, find a job, and then make some money, start a family, have kids, enjoy. So these are the things the Vedas are generally dealing with, sacrifices and methods to actually cater to these kind of public who are uh, involved in these kind of fruitive activities. So these Vedas, slowly they bring one person who actually follows the scriptural injunctions to the standard of self-realization. But Prabhupada is clearly saying that one must, rise above this dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, and then, come to this platform of liberation, or at least trying to inquire about, oneself. And when he comes to that position of Vedanta, that is the anta, and he inquires that who am I, what am I doing in this world, what is my actual purpose here, why do I exist, why am I suffering, why is some other person enjoying, until such a question even arises, we cannot try and understand the science of self-realization. So he says that one has to rise above this Vedic knowledge and at least go to the beginning stage of Vedanta to question what am I doing here, and only then we'll actually be at least on the platform of trying to understand what this process of self-realization is about. Purport 2.45. Any volunteers?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I go ahead?
Please.
2.545 purport. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely Karma Kanda chapter, are finished, then the chance of spiritual realization is offered in the form of Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas, as the Bhagavad Gita is the part of the fifth Veda, namely the Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of the transcendental life. As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities, become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. 2.46 purport. Can I go ahead, Mataji? Okay. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karmakanda division of the Vedic literature are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, specifically verse number 15.15. The purpose of studying the Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for so nicely reading. So yeah, like we were discussing, one has to arise or go above this karma kanda chapter of their life, that is basically engaging in activities for sense gratification or to satisfy our own whims and fancies, and go for the further studies. So Prabhupada is saying the Upanishads mark the beginning of the transcendental life. So Upanishad, the literal meaning, the meaning is Upanishad is like to be seated near, so it actually means to be seated near a person who is giving this Vedic or transcendental knowledge. That's what it is, like kind of going near a person who is giving this. So that is our first, step towards transcendental life, is that we approach somebody, we approach a person who is self-realized and ask for how to, understand these truths of life. And, that is after we cross this animalistic way of life, when we are not even thinking about self-realization or God realization. So he says that Upanishads mark the beginning of the transcendental life. And he also, Prabhupada, like we see in many, we'll be seeing throughout Bhagavad Gita and also in, today's slides, that Prabhupada generally translates self-realization to Krishna consciousness, because, the kind of interchangeably used here, because we'll see why Prabhupada uses it that way, in the slides which are to follow. So as of now, let's just take it at what Srila Prabhupada is giving us. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in Karma Kanda are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. So generally people do the rituals, but they still are not able to get to that platform of asking this question about what am I doing, why am I doing, and things like that. And also Srila Prabhupada says that the study of Vedas, it is given, this verse is a very famous verse. Does anybody know? Like they want to chant this verse?
Mataji, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Varun.
Okay. सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्तस्मृतज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदस्य सर्वे अहमेव वेद्य वेदान्तकृत्वेदविदेव चाहम्.
Yeah. Vedeshcha sarver ahameva vedyo. So he says, of all the Vedas, I am to be known. Ahameva vedyo. Vedanta krit, Vedavid eva chaham. Vedanta krit, he is the one who has actually, the Vedas come from Lord Krishna himself. Vedavid eva chaham. Vedavid is, he is the knower of the Vedas. Eva chaham. So that is, he is the knower of the Vedas. He is the, a person who actually gave us the Vedas, and the end aim of studying all these Vedas is to know him. That's what Krishna says in this verse. It's a very key preaching verse. Okay, so now we will move on to what Srila Prabhupada gives us as the different stages of transcendental realization. Okay, I'll just do this myself. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. The purport, it's a very long purport, but that is what is giving us the different stages as described by Srila Prabhupada, different stages of self-realization. So the purport, Krishna and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are identical. Therefore, Lord Krishna is referred to as Bhagavan throughout the Gita. Bhagavan is the ultimate in the absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized in three phases of understanding, namely Brahman, or the impersonal or all-pervasive spirit, Paramatma, or the localized aspect of the Supreme within the heart of all living entities, and Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this conception of the absolute truth is explained thus. Vadanti tat tattva vidha tattvam yajnano avayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdati. The absolute truth is realized in three phases of understanding by the knower of the absolute truth, and all of them are identical. Such phases of the absolute truth are expressed as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So we see that he says all of them are identical. Let's see why he says that. These three divine aspects, that is the answer to that, why they are identical. Because they are all divine, because they are Krishna's energies. These three divine aspects can be explained by the example of the sun, which also has three different aspects, namely the sunshine, the sun surface, and the sun planet itself. One who studies the sunshine only is the preliminary student. One who understands the sun's surface is further advanced, and one who can enter into the sun planet is the highest. Ordinary students who are satisfied by simply understanding the sunshine, its universal pervasiveness, and the glaring effulgence of its impersonal nature, may be compared to those who can realize only the Brahman feature of the absolute truth. We see that many people are they do say, like, though they don't believe in the concept of God, they say there must be some higher power, who's controlling everything and who's in charge of everything. So all glories to that higher power. And some people also believe that Mother Nature is, the ultimate supreme person, because Mother Nature is providing us with everything, and everything around us, we see our, like any catastrophes or calamities, like any kind of flooding or anything, that also is actually a part of nature. That's how they treat. So they treat Mother Nature to be the ultimate supreme person, and then they say that it's just nature. And as devotees, we actually see nature as Mother Nature, because we know that the prakriti is a she, is a female. But then the common person just calls it as nature. They don't even know it's Mother Nature. Sometimes they use the word Mother Nature just because Earth is a planet like that, but they don't know the actual meaning of the personality behind this nature. So we see that they just accept things as some supreme authority there, or it's just nature, or it is some science going on behind the scenes which we've not discovered yet. So these kind of people who just at least believe that there is some power or something going on, they have only realized the Brahman feature of the absolute truth. They're only like still dwelling on the energy aspect of the Lord. They don't know about the personal aspect of the Lord. The student who has advanced still further can know the sandisk, which is compared to the knowledge of the Paramatma feature of the absolute truth. And the student who can enter into the heart of the sun planet is compared to those who realize the personal features of the supreme absolute truth. Therefore, the bhaktas or the transcendentalists who have realized the Bhagavan feature of the absolute truth are the topmost transcendentalists. Although all students who are engaged in the study of the absolute truth are engaged in the same subject matter. The sunshine, the sun disk, and the inner affairs of the sun planet cannot be separated from one another, and yet the students of the three different phases are not in the same category. So even though the effulgence, the Brahman effulgence is nothing but the energy of the Lord, it's a manifestation of the energy of the Lord. And the Paramatma feature is again, another form of the Lord, one of the Purusha avatars. So still they are on a different level of realization. So are they different? They are still, Krishna's energy. So how do we understand what they mean by saying that they're different? This difference, it comes in, it arises due to the difference in tattva. Tattva is it's a conceptual realization. It's not like physically there is some difference or something like that, but it is about how you're actually conceptually realizing the truth. And so once I asked Maharaj, like this question when I was reading one verse from the Bhagavad Gita, in which it said that, which was that one? Devi Hesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya. So he says that Devi Hesha Gunamai, this material nature is also Devi Hesha. It's like mine, it is all spiritual. So I was not sure. I mean, we tend to refer to the material nature, as material, totally different from spiritual. But here Krishna is saying that Devi Hesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya. That is, it is difficult to cross this material nature. It is difficult to, combat or fight with this material nature. Mamevaya prapadyanti mayamita tarantiti. So one who takes to me can cross over this material nature. That's what he says. So I was asking Mara, so if they are the same, then what is the difference? If everything is Krishna's energy, so then what is the difference? So this verse, vadanti tattva vidaha, tattvam yajnanam avyayam. So this is for the spiritual understanding. It's the concepts that which are different. That's what he explained, that this brahmeti paramatmi bhagavan iti shabdite. These are three different concepts, or these are three different realizations on a conceptual level by the devotees of the Lord. That's what he explained. So he said, this is tattva, this is tattva jnana. The Sanskrit word Bhagavan is explained by the great authority Parashara Muni, the father of Vyasadeva, the Supreme Personality who possesses all riches, all strength, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation is called Bhagavan. There are many persons who are very rich, very powerful, very beautiful, very famous, very learned, and very much detached, but no one can claim that he possesses all riches, all strength, etc. entirely. Only Krishna can claim this because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No living entity, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, or Narayan, can possess opulences as fully as Krishna. Therefore, it is concluded in the Brahma Samhita by Lord Brahma himself that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one is equal to or above him. He is the primeval Lord or Bhagavan, known as Govinda, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna verse. Okay. Next. Any volunteers who want to read? Hi, Paul. Okay, Shreya, go ahead.
Many personalities possessing the qualities of Bhagavan. On the screen, yeah. There are many personalities possessing the qualities of Bhagavan, but Krishna is the supreme, because no one can excel him. He is the supreme person, and his body is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. He is the primeval Lord Govinda, and the cause of all causes. Brahma Samhita 5.1. In the Bhagavatam, also there is a list of many incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Krishna is described as the original personality of Godhead. from whom many incarnations and personalities of Godhead expand. It is
You can skip
from
the word.
okay. All the lists of incarnations of Godhead submitted herewith are either plenary expansions or part of the plenary expansions of the Supreme Godhead. But Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Bhagavatam 1.3.28. Therefore, Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, the source of both Super Soul and the impersonal Brahman. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So we see in the last line, we see that Srila Prabhupada says, the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the source of the super soul and the impersonal Brahman. So the other two features, they do not exist without the actual person. So it is important to realize that, when we are going after the Brahman or the Paramatma realization, we are not getting the full picture. We are only getting a partial picture of the whole science of self-realization. Okay, I'm just trying, for want of time, I'm just seeing. Okay, can we read this purport 2.28? Yeah, if anybody wants to volunteer.
Mataji, can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, antavanta ime deha, but that the soul is eternal, nitya syoktaha shariranaha, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, by lament, the changing of a dress. The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king. When we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for the loss of the body.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we see this last point, I was very attracted to this, what Srila Prabhupada says here. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for the loss of the body. So he says that, even the Vedic wisdom, if one is not able to even rise above the Vedic wisdom and go into Vedanta or Upanishads, or go into the science of self-realization, still a person can easily understand that one is not the body but just the spirit soul, because the basis of the Vedas is that we are not this body and we are the spirit soul. Okay, well, let's move on. So what are the symptoms of such a realized self-realized soul? So we talk so much about what the self-realized person is. I mean, what are the different aspects of self-realization, who is qualified to receive this knowledge, and how should one receive, who should we approach, things like that. And now let's see, how does the self-realized person actually look like, or how does he behave. So this is something I got from a Bhakti Shastri guide, because these verses, as we see, from 5:17 through 5:26 in the fifth chapter, they actually give this signs. I mean, they give the characteristics or the symptoms of a self-realized soul here. So we see vision of a self-realized soul, 5:18. It is equal vision to all living entities, irrespective of species and caste. This is that famous verse. Does anybody know which verse we are referring to?
Is it Vidya Vinaya Sampurna?
Yeah, Vidya Vinaya Sampanna, yeah. So Pandita looks at everybody with the same eyes, with the same vision. No attraction or aversion to matter, that he is flawless and impartial like the Lord. So a self-realized soul does not have this ichha dvesha, like this uh, a feeling of contempt or attachment to anybody like that. No rejoicing, lamenting for material events. So there is harsha shokha, like they don't engage in rejoicing or lament. It's a self explanatory. Intelligence is fixed in self, and one knows the science of God. So knows perfectly about three levels of absolute truth and constitutional position. This is the Brahman realization or self realization. Never attracted to sense gratification because he understands that contact of senses with sense objects is a source of misery and continual material existence. He experiences great happiness within, that is the higher taste. So he's not looking for outside material kind of comforts or material pleasures for happiness. He understands that the happiness comes from serving the Lord. Internal and external behaviors of a self-realized soul. This is from verses 5.23 to 5.26. He tolerates the forces of desire and anger and urges of senses till death. How he tolerates? By focusing his happiness, activities, and goal inward, higher taste, purifying his external activities by working for the benefit of others. By benefit of others, it's not referring to like mundane charity or philanthropic work, it is referring to giving spiritual knowledge to others. Fixed meditation on super souls soon attains liberation in the near future. So these are some of the symptoms or characteristics of a self-realized soul, which are outlined in these verses from 5:17 through 5:26. Okay. Prabhupada moves, further we see that he says a self-realized person, he knows no fear, and there's only peace when you're self-realized. So let's see what Prabhupada has to say. This is from verse 2.66. One who is connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness one who is not connected with the Supreme Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all entities, living entities, then one can have real peace. This is the peace formula which we saw in our last discussion, if you can remember. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam, that verse. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. So one who doesn't know Krishna or the purpose of life is to serve Krishna will be always disturbed. That's what Srila Prabhupada is trying to convey here. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. So there is no other way, we can falsely say, oh, when we meet many people, I'm very happy. I'm happy with what life has to give me, So they don't even know what they're going through, and they don't even understand what is the meaning of actual happiness. But then they claim that they're very happy, they're very peaceful, everything is going fine, perfect. Life is perfect, life is great, life is good. But Prabhupada very clearly says here that the self-manifested peaceful condition can be only achieved in relationship with Krishna. So we may be in denial all we want, but this is the actual truth. 1.29. Okay.
Mataji,
Yeah, please
my
go ahead.
apologies. Mataji, shall we have one more session, Mataji?
I'm almost I'm almost done, Prabhuji.
Sure, Mataji.
There's like 4 more slides. What do you say?
Sure, Mataji.
I know it's too late.
I
Let
just
me.
wanted to make it hurry, Mataji. These are so valuable information.
Yeah, I
So
actually prepared that I don't want to go beyond one class, but for some reason it's it's just stretching and stretching.
no problem, no problem.
I mean, is it too late for everybody? I mean, should we stop and take questions? I can
Yeah,
just explain this, in a
I
gist.
I think my thought is like yeah, if we can stop and summarize our questions, maybe we can cover the next week.
Sure,
Yeah,
Prabhuji,
that is yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Prabhuji, we can stop here. I don't want to just go on and on. Yeah, like that. Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for stopping. Yeah.
Sorry, Mataji.
No worries. Yeah, anybody has any comments, questions, realizations, please feel free to share. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Varun, you raise your hand.
Yeah, that was just to read.
Oh, we're not reading anymore, baby.
I
We are
know,
doing.
yeah. It's from much before.
Sorry?
It's from much before.
Okay, no worries. Okay. Yeah, anybody wants to share their thoughts? Shreya, you raise your hand.
Thank you for the class. I just wanted to share something.
Mhm.
That few days ago, and I was uh, doing book distribution, and then when I was distributing a Gita, this I asked this person, do you have like sufferings in your life? And this person said, no, I don't have any sufferings. I'm completely happy. And then my friend was with me, and then she asked, what about coronavirus? He said, I don't care about that. And then I said, do you want to get old? He said, no. And I said, can you stop it? He said, no. And then I asked him, isn't that a suffering? He said, yes, but I can't find a solution to that. And then I gave him the Gita, and he bought it for $25.
Jai, you're such a wonderful preacher. Wow. How old are you, Shreya?
I'm 13.
Wow, you are. I must say, really on the path of self realization, if not already there. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your kind association. Yeah. Anybody else want to share their thoughts or any points or questions or anything? Okay, if there are no questions, so maybe then we'll just end the class now.
Maybe Lakshmi Mataji, if she's having any questions, or she can
Lakshmi
summarize.
Mataji, do you
Yes,
have any
Hare
questions or
Krishna
comments?
Mataji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Mataji, like I had so many questions, Mataji, so I don't know if there'll be time to like address everything. Uh, but I want to ask one question, Mataji. There was a difference between jnana and vijnana
Mhm.
in slide 7, I guess, but there was no explanation on it. I just wanted to know what is the difference between jnana and vijnana, Mataji.
Yeah, jnana is the knowledge, and vijnana is the applied knowledge, which is self-realized. We may, like, for example, like somebody was saying earlier in the class, right? Like, we understand that we are not this body, we are just the spirit soul, but how much are we able to practically use this knowledge? That is vijnana. That, when in times of when I fall sick or when I have some pain in the body, I'm able to transcend this idea, that I'm not this. I mean, I'm able to really use that idea, and say that I'm not this body, I'm not suffering, it's just the body which is the cause of the pain, but I'm, the spirit soul, I'm very happy all the time. Spirit soul is anandamayo abhyasat, right? The spirit soul is always happy. So how much are we able to practically use this? That is what is vijnana or self-realization. Like, when we, there's actually this very funny anecdote with Srila Prabhupada, you know, uh, I forget, was it Brahmananda Prabhu and another devotee? Like they were walking and it was raining very bad. I think in Chennai it was at my Guru Maharaj. I seem to forget the personalities here, but two Srila Prabhupada disciples, and they were walking, and one of them fell into the ditch actually, and the other person he pulled this person out, and then they went and told Srila Prabhupada, see, this devotee actually fell into the ditch. So then Srila Prabhupada said that that person, the other devotee who fell into the ditch, actually has got the realization. You're just having knowledge. So it's like he went through it practically. So Prabhupada was able to bring out that kind of a truth even from such a simple incident. So unless we are able to practically apply it, applied knowledge is a self-realization, like which we are able to use in our own lives. And um, not just having the understanding that okay, such a thing exists as an abstract theory in our mind, but which is actually like when we see this sadhus and all, we've heard several Maharajas too. I don't want to mention names, but some Maharajas who can go without food and drink and sleep for even a month. I've heard, like, like they are beyond the body, like even Srila Prabhupada, we have heard many pastimes that recently also, was it Hari Sauri Prabhu's diaries, he was sharing that Srila Prabhupada, when he used to travel at that age of 70, he never experienced jet lag, those material symptoms or anything. And he would just get off the flight and start giving a class right away, like so they are kind of beyond this material modes. So and Prabhupada, his if we see his routine, we'll be taken by shock. He just slept for a couple of hours. He was translating books. He was dictating into the dictaphone in the wee hours of the night, and he ate very simple too, very frugal. And so it's as difficult for us to comprehend, uh, how Srila Prabhupada did that at that age, writing so many books at that age of 70. I don't know, it's not humanly possible. So these are very self-realized souls who are able to do that. And I hope that helps, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. So when we say the term jnanis, or when we say we have to get the jnana, so that is purely means the intellectual part we are talking about, not the realization, like the
Yes,
term I'm.
Mataji. Realization, like we saw in the other verse too, tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So we get the knowledge from the spiritual master, but we also have to serve, to get the practical knowledge. So just getting the knowledge but not engaging devotional service, of course hearing and getting the knowledge is also one part of devotional service. But unless we we are at that platform, and which just by hearing, like Srila Haridas Thakur, he could just chant 24 hours a day and be happy. Or like Parikshit Maharaj, when he knew that he was going to die in 7 days, he just listened to the Srimad Bhagavatam and he concentrated his energies at the end of the discourse, and so if you're at that stage when you can just listen and become totally self-realized and curb your senses and dedicate yourself to the service of Krishna, then the knowledge may equate to self-realization. But then in general in Kali Yuga, we also see that Krishna says that artificially we should not restrain our senses or not give up our activities, like that. Even in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, even the sannyasis, they do some kind of devotional activities, like Srila Prabhupada actually you know, he encouraged the sannyasis also to, do so many activities in Krishna consciousness, like going out and preaching, traveling, and things like that. So, yeah, if you're in at that level where you can just, just by knowledge and, at such a renounced level that you can become self-realized just by knowledge, it's kind of difficult in Kali Yuga. Yeah, that path is difficult.
Okay, Mataji. Mataji, actually, you were saying that self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. So when we first listen, when we first hear the term self-realization, we all were thinking about self, our atma, our spirit. But this explanation that Prabhupada is giving is entirely very not different. It's an elevated state that you think about Krishna. We are not concentrating on ourselves. So he says that interest in Supreme is the real self-interest. So now I'm trying to understand. So what is the difference between the inquiry about the self and about the Supreme?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. Go
that I
ahead.
want. Yes, Mother. Because when you say the term self-realization, that comes self first, like your Atma, you're inquiring about your Atma. But Prabhupada is telling interest on Supreme is the real self-interest. So where is the position of the self over there, and or what is the difference between your inquiry on self and also on Supreme?
Yes, Mataji. So, like we also saw in the first slide, Srila Prabhupada answers there. He says that the first step in self realization is that you inquire what I'm doing, Athato Brahma Jignasa. What is, what is everything? What is the Brahman like that? Athato Brahma, like who am I? What am I doing? That is the first step. So, like, actually there are like about 6 slides down which will explain everything in clarity. I didn't have time to go through that today. So basically the answer to your question is that that is the first step, Mataji, like you rightly say, trying to understand who am I. I'm not this body, I'm just a spirit soul. But it does not just stop there. It is sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. Actually there is a slide for 5 slides down, which Srila Prabhupada discusses in relation to self-realization. So first we understand we are not this body and we are just a spirit soul. And then we understand that we are the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how do you serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead? By only when you know his likes, dislikes, what is his nature, what are his qualities, what is, what pleases him, what does not please him. That's the way we can serve, right? So ultimately, when we realize this and we're trying to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's all about him, right? I mean, it's not about us. So though externally, like you very rightly said, Mataji, people think self-realization is about self, trying to see that I know I'm not the body, I'm the spirit soul. But what do you do after that? After you realize that, after that you realize, and do nothing about it. I mean, there are some slides which come down further which will discuss this aspect also in detail. So does a self-realized person doesn't have to do any duty? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he does not have to perform any duty. So what does he do, a self-realized person? Prabhupada answers that question also. So, but I have not discussed those slides. So yeah, it does not stop there. That's the first phase of self-realization, where we ask, what am I doing here? Who am I? I'm not this body, but I'm just a spirit. So okay, after that, what do? You have to serve Krishna, right? Otherwise, what's the point in knowing all this? So that is the answer. That's why, in it said that nate vidu swarthagatim, he Vishnu, that swarthagatim, the self-interest lies in knowing Krishna, because without him we don't know how to serve him, right? I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yes, Mataji, you answered that question very well, because the term self-realization literally means that we are only on self, myself, I'm Atman and what I'm doing. But when Prabhupada is explaining in the term of Krishna and you give the explanation, now it's very clear, Mataji. So we have to understand that I'm the spirit, not the body. That is like an initial step.
sambandha, yeah.
Sambandha, yeah, the first initial sambandha. And then you have to go and you have to serve Krishna. Your position is to serve Krishna. So when this completes, only then it is self-realization. So if you're going to stop in the middle, then actually it's not continued. We don't say that they're self-realized or we are self-realized.
Yeah, it's not complete in that aspect. Like, generally these people who are on the Brahman platform, they understand I'm not the spirit soul. I mean, I'm not the body, I'm the spirit soul, like that. But that's not complete, like we just saw, that's just one aspect of it.
Yes.
It's not the complete truth of science of self-realization. So,
Yes, Mataji. Now it
but
is very
in general parlance, like in general, how people take it, they stop there. I mean, they say that a person who's, out of this body, he is not influenced by the body, is self-realized. But Srila Prabhupada always stretches it to that, stretches it more to the level of a devotee, because he wants us to go there. So yeah, in general parlance, that's how it is looked at,
So, yes,
somebody who realizes that I'm not this body, like that.
so as you mentioned in the slides, Mataji, so only from a self-realized person we have to get the knowledge. So since Prabhupada is a self-realized person, he knows the entire circle. That's why he is taking us to us in every purport.
True.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, also, we may find many of the translations a little different from what Sanskrit scholars give and things like that. But because it is more than a literal translation, it is the realization of Srila Prabhupada which we are actually getting, So it is self-realization coming from the self-realized soul. So.
Okay, so the purpose of Prabhupada is realizations, which we cannot see in the another translation books. So the
You will not
is
find.
realization. Yes.
I mean, I don't know. Of late, I have heard like acharyas giving purports after seeing Prabhupada do that, but I don't know like like other Mayavads or anybody giving like real good purports and things like that. I mean, given books with purports and things. I think Prabhupada's books are the authority in that sense.
Yes, yes, Mataji, that speaks because I read Bhagavad Gita, but that's only translation.
Yeah.
Even if there is a word-to-word translation, then you'll have only translation. But the purport means that shows the Prabhupada's realization. So that makes a very big difference.
True.
Between.
Like the Vaishnava acharyas, they generally give that commentary. Basically, they give the commentary, but I mean, in English, I think Prabhupada is the authority. Maybe in other languages, other acharyas have given, but English definitely Prabhupada is the authority.
Yes, yes, Mataji. Yeah, that's clear. Mataji, then one final question. I don't want to take much time. Mataji, you said that concept-wise realization, that which you were talking about the three aspects of the absolute truth, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan feature. And you mentioned that your Guruji was telling you that it is the three different realization in conceptual level, but Tattvanyana. But the point is, Mataji, concept wise realization, okay, you say something, you explain something, and each and every wise they take their concept, they understand the concept and they realize it. So where does the practical aspect come into this, Mataji? Like practical, how do they realize it?
See, some truths, like trying to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that sense, it is explained in concepts. That does not mean that there is no practical realization. Like what I'm trying to say is these spiritual truths, when we say Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate, this is Vadanti Tattva Vidaha. Tattva, that these are, though it is the spiritual, like we say, when we look at the sun, we are not saying, oh, that is the sunshine there, I see the rays there. We always say is the sun is there, oh, I see the sun has come up in the morning, like that, right? We're not kind of trying to differentiate, but actually there are different aspects to it. So when I say that in realization, what Prabhupada is trying to mean here is that some people just are looking at the sun as a ball of fire, and seeing that, oh, the sun is giving nice bright sunshine and like that light. So they just think that a sun is a light giving object or something like that. Some may see that it's like a ball of fire, and some may know that there is somebody controlling the sun, right? Because it's rising in the morning, setting in the evening, and it follows the cyclical process. So only some go into that realization, right? Not all are we have a partial understanding. We say, oh, the sun is up, now we have light here, there's no more darkness, like that. So some people may only be satisfied or happy with that level of understanding. They may not dig deeper as to why is the sun rising there at that point of time and it's setting here, so what is the sun actually doing, like that. Like they don't go deep into the whole idea of that. But so that's what in concept, this analogy of the sun is given so as to understand that some may be just scraping the surface of this science of self-realization, and they may just be concentrating, they may look at everything as the energy of the God, like in India, to common practice is there, like when we uh, when I switch on the light, we always pray looking at the light, and like we understand the energy of the Lord, and light is there, and we are grateful for what that is. We also pray, like farmers, they also offer the sacrifices, at the harvest season. They are like in Shankranti, they offer sacrifices to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like that they make off sacrifices. So they understand that, like all this nature, everything is provided by nature, or like some energy of the Supreme Lord, but they're not going deep into understanding. So what, okay, you understood that, everything is the energy of the Supreme Lord, this effulgence, everything, but what about it? So how does, how do you work with that? I mean, what after you understand that this is the Supreme, and this is the energy, what do you do with that knowledge? So they don't have that full realization that yet, that their purpose is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't go as far as that. They're just happy with knowing that, okay, everything is provided by God, everything is his energy, like that. So that is how, uh, like they are different in terms of how they realize the actual supreme absolute truth.
Yes, Mataji. So the level they get into understanding is different. So the
Yeah,
degrees of
the
understanding,
level.
yeah, the level they get into is different. Based on that, the aspects are different, but it's the same absolute truth. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
it's the same absolute truth. Like in another verse also, um, one verse is there of Paramatma. When I'm not getting it in my mind now, I will share it on the Bhakti Sangha. In that also clearly it is mentioned. This same concept is mentioned. I will share with, I'm not getting it right now, but the same concept is explained there also, that though, all this is the features of the Lord, so what is the actual difference, so if they are all spiritual, then what are these three things we are discussing always, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan? So these are conceptual levels of realization, it is for our realization how much we actually know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's what is explained there also.
Yes, Mataji, that's a very nice explanation, because always in Bhagavad Gita we come across all the three aspects. But what's the difference? There should be a difference, because there are three things and there should be a difference within them. Very nice, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Very wonderful class, and you patiently answered all the questions. Thank you so much. Jai
Thank
Satchidananda. Hare Krishna.
you. I actually learned from your questions, Mataji. I'm grateful to you. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Yeah, anybody else has any thoughts, or it's kind of late, 9 o'clock? Okay, we will do Vaishnava Pranam. Um, Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa
Hare
sindhubhya.
Krishna.
Yeah, Radhika, you had something to say? Hi, bol Radhika.
Hare Krishna Mataji, just wanted to express my gratitude and thank. I just wanted to thank you, Mataji, and thanks to Lakshmi Mataji also. Every class I see her so enthusiastic and asking so many questions, and I appreciate your patience also, Mataji, nicely explaining. This concept itself is so nice, self-realization, and how you brought through all the verses and how you connected Srila Prabhupada's perspective, because he always brings in devotional service aspect when it comes to self-realization. I mean, the term self-realization, as Lakshmi Mataji mentioned, it's so confusing because it is self. And in the Ashtanga Yoga process, also, there is the term that's always being referred, self realization, and then Paramatma realization. So I was just contemplating on that as well, because, right, understanding, I mean, in the Ashtanga Yoga process, you actually understand the self, and then you go to the realization of understanding, realizing the Paramatma. So there also that term is used. But Srila Prabhupada obviously wants us to focus in the path of devotional service, and Sagari Mataji brought out that aspect of devotional service of Srila Prabhupada by contemplating on various verses and digging through them. Very, very well summarized class, Mataji. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Radhika, for preparing the slides so beautifully.
Oh, Mataji, all glories to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, anybody else has any comments or realizations? Okay, we'll say the Vaishnava Pranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namaste.
Jai. Sagari Mataji ki jai. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Vrinda. I need all the blessings. Thank you. Yeah, all my prayers for Her Grace Preeti Vilasni Mataji. Yeah, my humble prayers. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Mataji, ending the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Hare Krishna.